Good afternoon. This is Dr. Long at CGSC for the F102 slide voiceover. Learning objectives. Key points. Managing change. 3 primary decision support systems. JCIDS for requirements. DAS for material. PPB to manage the entire enterprise. Title 10 is the law that defines the responsibilities for DA to develop and support capabilities that are required by those geographic combatant commanders. That responsibility gets executed through headquarters DA, Army commands, Army Service Component commands, 1 per theater, and then the direct reporting units and field operating agencies. ADCON is an administrative control where by the DA exercises its Title 10. ADCON's not a command relationship. 2 separate chains of command. The ASCC is the point of contact in the theater to exercises. The Army plan, 5 parts that, as you can see, integrates, prioritizes, directs the execution of Title 10. The eye chart. Straightforward. That's the language you got to be able to know. Be able to define and give examples of .mil-PF. It is a systematic, disciplined look at how we can define gaps, capabilities, solutions, the amount of change. It's a multi-purpose lens. It is the central feature of how we analyze our profession and everything about it. We never make a decision without considering .mil-PFP. That one's a layup. Guaranteed. JCIDS is part of the 3 primary decision support systems. It's how we sort out requirements and capabilities. DAS for material, PPBE for budgeting and managing the entire enterprise. 3 requirements lenses based on urgency, and then the driving documents that generate the requirements. So 3 different ways to respond to those needs. Validated by J8 and the JROC, or at the department service level by the AROC. How you get stuff. The relationship between joint concepts and Army concepts, they've got to be nested. ARCIC is our organization to ensure that we have an internal consistency among the Army family of concepts and that they are nested within and in support of the joint concepts. This is important in the relationship between how we get to doctrine, the authoritative guidance, near term, 3 to 5 years. Visions are those broad looks at how we think it might fight, 15 to 20 years out, translates into concepts, and then that translates into doctrine. So 15 to 20, 5 to 15, and then 3 to 5. This is important. Concepts are not doctrine until tested, approved, and accepted. That's why it's important to know what's the doctrine so that we know what the authoritative guidance is. Yeah. An eye chart. Absolutely central. Guidance comes in. We do a functional area assessment, a gap analysis, and then a solutions analysis. I think these words are a little out of order. The FAA is a functional area assessment. What's going on? What's needed? The needs analysis is really done in the functional needs analysis. But how you get to that functional needs analysis is the gap analysis. So I believe this is miswritten a little bit. It's a difference that probably doesn't make a distinction, but we're going to treat it as FAA as the description of the current environment. Functional needs assessment describes the future and what we lack, what the gap is to get to that need. So the gap analysis is what you do in the functional needs assessment. And then the solutions analysis is when we've generated this exhaustive list of potential solutions and then selected the package that we want to recommend. And then the output of that, non-material solutions and material solutions. Non-material gets you to the DCR, that's the doctrinal capabilities requirement. And then the ICD-CDD, those capabilities developments document and initial capabilities documents. So the important point there is you get both material and non-material solutions that come out of this process. That's the connection between what the commanders say they want and what we're being driven to do. The needs analysis to sort out what we have and what we want, then the gap analysis for the difference that comes up with the FNA. So when we've identified that capability gap, if there is a material solution going to be involved, then it goes the route of the ICD. And then that's going to get further specification in material solutions. And then the DCR talks about the non-material solutions. And then for each one of these, there's a proponent and a specified output. So I would know how to walk from here through the mouse maze. Strategy drives our vision, which is part of the TAP. The Army Operating Concept, the capstone. Framing, functional, supporting, advisory concepts. So that's all part of what we have. Then we go through this iterative process to determine what the required capabilities are, what the capability gaps in those required capabilities are, and then experimenting and testing to figure out how we start satisfying those. And from that effort of experimentation and testing, we use those .mil-PF insights, which then drive us towards these material and non-material solutions. The two biggest ones, organization and material. Organization, because you're talking about significant changes to these capability packages and units. And then material, because you're bending metal and costing a lot of money. Validators, the Army Requirements Oversight Council, and the JROC for the joint. So functional area assessment, functional needs assessment, functional solutions assessment. I would note here that Futures Command receives the report and directs and integrates the CDIDS down at the Centers of Excellence. Remember those Centers of Excellence, those proponents also respond to the 4-star at TRADOC, so they've actually got, a dual line of responsibility. You'll see that in my one-page sketch. AROC oversight at HQDA, and then JCIDS on top of the joint drives of the train. The newest entrant into the players here. Formerly ARCIC, so Futures and Concept Center. Received it from TRADOC. Capabilities Development Center, Combat Systems Center. That's a level of detail you don't need to worry about. This is one you got to note. The 357 and the organizational integrators, Those are the requirements validators. They're the ones that really drive all those MTO decisions that drive unit readiness and requirements. The cross-functional teams have a special role to play. That's we're trying to get a better, quicker definition of the requirements that we actually want by bringing more people to the table underneath ARCIC to chair those things. And those 8 includes the 6 modernization priorities plus a couple more network and soldier. Yeah. Clear. Just another way of saying .mil/PF solutions are managed or solved by different proponents. Nothing unusual there. The two to highlight in the organizational side, you have these three important components. A unit reference sheet, that is a sketch of a unit. It's a roughed out design. The force design update is how that design competes for approval, and if it's approved as a requirement, then it gets further documented into a requirements document, the TO&E, Table of Organization Equipment, and then it goes to compete in TAA for resourcing, where it can become an MTO when it becomes a modified Table of Organization Equipment. Use of FMSA, Force Management Support Agency. These are the documenters, people who maintain the document database. Material solutions start with initial capabilities documents and capability development document, and then basis of issue plans, which defines how those packages of equipment are going to be fielded throughout the force. This is a money slide. It takes you from soup to nuts. Generating required capabilities using the CBA. That's JCIDS. Then applying the doctrine to develop organizational design. So we define the required capabilities. Then we design organizations. Then we develop organizational models. That's the TO&E. That's the supply catalog listing for that package of capabilities in unit form. Then we go to TAA to determine the organizational authorizations, what it is we're going to get, and then documenting those authorizations. That's when the resources are approved and then applied and then documented. So those 5 steps, I would know those. Develop required capabilities, design organizations, then detail that out into models, then determine how you're going to resource it, and then document those. That's that MTO becomes that contract. We'll talk some more about that. We're not going to talk a lot about the JLTV. I'd rather you sort out how to apply these things inside your own paper. Yeah. That's everything right there. There's a few key money slides on there. I think this one is a money slide because it talks about those big phases. That's a logical progression. As long as you can talk the concept of how you go from a want into defining the requirement in JCIDS through CBA. That capabilities-based assessment is the analytical engine of JCIDS. Then Futures Command, ARCIC, and the COEs, those proponents are designing the organizations in their branches. Then the FDU process proposes those packages, which, when approved, then get fleshed out into organizational models and TO&Es, documented at use of FMSA. That's the requirements document, the TO&E. What I'm required, no resources have been applied. In TAA, we then compete all those good ideas and existing units to see what we're going to resource, and then the resource decisions get documented in MTOs and TDAs. It's the other non-warfighting mission document. Okay. Hang in there.